Good evening, everybody. Today is February the 4th, if I recall correctly. And I'm not in my office now, and so I'm at a place where I normally would have to have a mask on. But good evening, everybody. I hope everybody is safe and enjoying this wonderful weather that we had today. Today, in case you decided to tune into our meeting today, the Board of Education is having a professional development session with the wonderful folks that work on making sure that our buildings are renovated and restored and are worthy of our children being educated. So even though this isn't a typical business meeting, this might be a meeting that you really want to hear about, because when you want to know really where your kids are and what they're doing, the Board of Education wants you to know that we have a facilities modernization board as a result of state legislation that is in large part responsible for buildings are safe, secure, and are places where our children can learn successfully. So I think what I should do is turn the gavel, so to speak, over to our superintendent, and then she will, if that's okay with you, Leslie, and then someone can introduce our panelists for today. Is that right?
Yes. Thank you, President White. Good evening. Good evening to our board commissioners. Good evening to our staff and to our partners who are here with us this evening. As President White said, tonight we'll have an opportunity to hear about an overview of our process and where we are as far as our phases relative to the modernization of some of our buildings in our schools in the Rochester City School District. As President White said, it is important for our schools to keep up with contemporary times and to ensure that all of our scholars have spaces that are conducive to learning. So tonight, I will turn the quote unquote gavel over to Chief of Operations, Michael Schmidt, who will provide an overview and will partner with our folks on the city side to talk about the process in Rochester. Mike, I'll turn it over to you.
Good evening, everyone. It's really a privilege to be here this evening. I have three colleagues here will assist us in the presentation or an update on the modernization program. Our chair, Mr. Norman Jones, our executive director, Mr. Alan Williams, and our program manager, Pepe Nasilian. So I'm going to turn over to our chair, Norm Jones, to start our presentation this evening.
Thank you, Mike. I'm Norman Jones. I'm the chair of the board for the school modernization program. I'm also the commissioner of environmental services for the city of Rochester. But most importantly, I'm a graduate of city schools. I attended school number 2, school number 9, Frederick Douglass, which is now Northeast, and I graduated from East High School. I have a strong passion and an affinity for our city schools and the children and the families that depend on it. Being able to spend my free time associated with this worthy program is so important. I remind my partner in crime, Mike Schmidt, that I don't get paid any extra for doing this. This is a labor of caring and commitment and meeting that highest calling of being a public servant. So what we're going to do tonight is go over where we're at with from phase 1 and phase 2, some of the key points, some of the areas in which we were successful. And then we're going to spend the majority of the time talking about phase 3 and where do we go from here, and support that we need from each and every one of you to make sure that we get the phase 3 legislation passed through the Senate and the Assembly this year, because it's so important to keep this progress going, because it means so much to our entire community. But before I move on, I just want to say that we're here with our program coordinator, Alan Williams. Alan Williams is probably familiar to some of you, but some of you may not be familiar with Alan. Alan was once a member or a commissioner on the Board of Education. He's worked for the city of Rochester, and now he's the program coordinator for the school modernization program, reporting directly to the board. And we also have Pepin Asilian from Savin Engineers. Pepin is vice president with Savin Engineers, and he's responsible for our program management. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Mike, and Mike's going to start the presentation. You're muted.
Okay, Kelly, next slide, please. So what we thought we'd do this evening is provide you a really high level, a brief overview of where we come from, and then spend much of the time talking about phase 3. So very briefly, we are now scheduled to complete the second phase of our modernization programming in this coming summer with the completion of our project at East High School. The focus has really been, upgrading our space needs and aligning it with our educational programs. Certainly all of our infrastructure upgrades, mechanical systems at all of our buildings, and an abundance of health and safety work, and certainly some updating of real critical spaces like cafeterias, gymnasiums, and we've been very privileged to put in several turf fields in the multiple phases that we've completed. Next slide, please. What we're going to show you here is certainly a series of slides that talk about some projects in phase 1. One of the priorities certainly has been community access. So with many of the buildings that we've renovated, we have provided a outside access for the community to use spaces like the cafeterias, like our gymnasiums, and there's also common areas, excuse me, that you would see where people can come and meet and not have to open the entire school building in order to do that. So you see above, that's the brand new gymnasium addition at school number 10, and down to our right, down to your right, a series of pictures of that school, as well as the far right, the picture of Monroe High School and their renovated facility on the rear of the building. So just some spectacular improvements along the way. Next slide, please. One of the real focus points has been to really create some dynamic learning spaces can you go back? Thanks, Guy. Some dynamic learning spaces for our kids. We refer to them quite often as maker spaces, where we can do all kinds of hands-on academic programming. They are completely multifunctional facilities that have all the different accoutrements that you would need to do any collaborative work among educational disciplines. And this is really, I think, really one of the key focal points of some of the modernization that we have done. To the left, new collaboratorium over at East High School, which is a multifunctional space that they utilize for all kinds of events. Another highlight to the top is that's a brand new makerspace at Edison High School, our career and technical high school. Next slide, please. Helen, why don't you, would you please take this next piece and talk about some of the impact on our community in terms of creation of jobs in the business opportunity program? Is he there?
Helen?
All right. Well, in the nature of time, we'll bring him in a moment.
Here
There you are.
Yeah.
I really wanted you to provide some overview of this, because this has really been one of the key areas that you've really grown our organization in the job creation as well as the business opportunity program. So can you kind of go over that, please, for us?
Yes. One of the key metrics that we were looking at in key objectives was this $1.3 billion program, which is the largest public works program in upstate New York. We wanted to make sure that we would have city residents, as well as women and minority-owned businesses, as well as workers on the project itself. And we have done that. When you look at every conceivable metric that we've had, both in phase 1 and in phase 2, we have exceeded our goals in terms of the number of workers we have from the city, as well as the number of minorities and women we have, both from the city as well as from the surrounding county. And then when you look at the business participation, both for minority and women-owned firms, it has really exceeded all the original goals and expectation that we've had. And a big piece of that, what we strive to do is to build a pipeline for minority and women-owned firms to work not only on these projects in the RSMP, but also on projects that go beyond that, either for the city school district, and for private companies or firms and projects overall. And a big part of that, next slide, please, has to do with what we call the Business Opportunities Program, which is a sort of unique program that was created by Savin. And again, the intent here really is to build a pipeline of minority and women-owned firms to participate on the project. And the Business Opportunity Program itself, it is a series of modules that go for about 18 weeks overall. And at the end of the project, these firms, the individuals who represent these firms, they would graduate, and we have been very successful in giving opportunities to these firms on the projects themselves.
Alan? Could you talk briefly after you get done with the Business Opportunity Program about the loan program also that's part of this?
Okay. It's one of the thank you, Chairman. One of the key elements of the Business Opportunities Program is a revolving loan program. Was created by Savin engineers who were the program managers. They put in $100,000. And the board put in another $150,000 to seed this revolving loan fund. And how the loan fund works is that for any firm, minority or women-owned firm that has work on any of our projects, if at any point in time that they have a cash flow issue, they can borrow up to $10,000 at interest at no interest to fund their either payroll or to pay their suppliers. And when they draw, get a draw from the program, then we are paid back. And so far we've had 100% repayment rate and a 0% default rate.
So it's really important to note that these two unique programs that Savin Engineering really came up with, basically to look at some of the pitfalls that have gone on and for different businesses, especially minority businesses or small businesses starting off, and looking at ways to make sure they're successful. One is making sure that they know how to be a good business person. Then two, if they run into situations where they have cash flow issues. So we really are very fortunate to have a program manager that has the wherewithal and the foresight to put together a structure that's going to assist these businesses to be successful working forward on with these projects. So this is just one of the key highlights that we don't want to underscore or not really highlight when we talk about how we do certain things to make sure that businesses have an opportunity to be successful through this program.
Right, because what we found is one of the key hurdles that minority and women-owned businesses and small businesses face is that of cash flow on a regular basis. So the program, the revolving loan program, was really created to address that. That any point in time they run up against a cash flow problem, if there's the slow for the general contractor, that if they're slow in paying, then they would have the opportunity to tap into the revolving loan fund.
Kelly, next slide, please. So we're going to give you just real briefly 4 profiles from two from phase 1 and 2 from phase 2 of, we quite use the word modernization when we talk much about this topic, but it really taken an existing structure and really turned it into something that's a showcase for our community. So we're going to profile school 50, school 58, school number 4, and school number 16. So first, number 50. Number 50 is a phase 1 building, and the renovations here were multifaceted, both inside and outside the building, to the point where we added some.
We had it. Are you frozen, Mike?
I'm good. Kelly, next slide, please. I'm sorry, I mumbled.
You are frozen, Mike. You might need to restate what you had regarding School 50.
My apologies. Are you, we can go to the next slide, please.
Okay.
As the Commissioner Jones had mentioned, the Maynard's building in the rear that was one of the areas we've knocked that building down and taken all that space for a brand new baseball field and brand new soccer, a new rectangle on the back of the building. Next slide, please.
One of the, as we talk about the school modernization program and the impact to the community, that Maynard's was basically blocking an amazing vista from North Clinton Avenue to the actual field and the landscaping and the beautiful school that's there. When we take that Maynard's building, warehouse building down, that really doesn't meet with the actual streetscape of a school environment. When we take that down, we put in, a ball field and a walking track. Not only does it do something for the community, but it also makes that school more attractive to people who may want to basically walk to that school later on.
And you can truly see some of the improvements there. It's just a much brighter facility and much more energizing for our students. Next slide, please, Kelly. Our second story is school number 58 on University Ave, University and Style. Many of you are very familiar with this over 100-year-old building, and this is one of our first real site and type of construction that we had to do there. A lot of lessons learned in this project, but we really think it's we know now that it's a showcase for our students, and their academic success is really exemplified by the developments we've done there. Next slide, please. One of the goals here was really to transform this building into a modern campus. And, we basically built a building right over the top of the existing one in order to accomplish this. And it's really a credit to Pepin and his team. Engineering in this is just absolutely incredible to take this and turn it into a showcase. Next slide, please.
Mike, can I add one point? Go back to the previous slide. The second stanza, it says, inspire community participation with students, conducting research on community schools in partnership with local leaders. We at the City of Rochester, we're in the process of basically looking at phase 2 of our inner loop project. Basically, phase 1, we filled in one section of it. Phase 2, we're looking at filling in a second section of it. We had students from School 58 participate in a community roundtable with their ideas of what should happen with the parcel of land at School 58 that's adjoining or what's right next to the inner loop. That's just a great example of how this modernization program and what we're doing with our resources, how we're reaching out, connecting, and making helping our students become more civic-minded, more involved, and participating in government. So that's just a prime example of how this program is really expanding into the actual, not only in the classroom, but out into the community. And when we start the work on the actual inner loop, we feel that there will be more green space and more space or opportunities to make this a more sustainable, livable campus that's going to provide you with more recreational and green space.
One thing that normally points out and emphasize, this is truly a partnership. The collaboration on different city initiatives and city projects, incorporate those with our school projects makes it much more cost efficient and allows us to really maximize our resources in the benefit not only of the students, but the actual community itself. Next slide, please. This is the last piece on the 58. On the 58, you can see the addition and how it really it's very difficult to replicate 100-year-old construction, but it really sets in nicely on the university campus. And when you see the outside, it doesn't give you any sense of what it's like in the inside. You can kind of see the transformation with the gymnasium and some of the other spaces inside of that building. If you kind of, when we were preparing this, I had kind of forgotten how much work we actually had done, so to speak. You're so immersed in the projects that are right in front of you. It's really nice to go back and see the results of that. It kind of takes your breath away when you go back and look at it in hindsight. I talked about lessons learned. So now we're going to focus on a little bit on phase two projects here, number 4 and number 16. Number 4 was one of the key parts here was certainly updating and modernizing these classrooms. This is a building we chose to invest in because it's adjacent to a city park. And so it has an abundance of space in order for us to maximize there. We also put air conditioning into this building. It has a large population of students with disabilities, and those students have many unique needs, and air conditioning really accentuates their academic experience. In addition, we strategically placed air conditioning around our city so that we can have 12-month programming and not really have students get on buses to go to different areas for an air-conditioned space. So one of the real goals here was to kind of build those into the system. There was virtually no buildings with air conditioning when we first started this back in 2012, 2013. We really accelerated that. Next slide, please. Once again, some befores and afters here. You can notice one thing at the bottom right, the mechanical systems. That's one of the really important pieces in terms of being energy efficient. And the long-term goal for these buildings was to make sure all of our mechanical systems are state of the art. We've had so much of a conversation recently around ventilation and with our COVID-19 response that all of these buildings have made that process so much easier for us to transition with. And this is just another example of that. It also shows you the scale, the amount of work that goes into this when we do a year or two, a year and a half long project. Upper left, you'll see a brand new addition, and we'll show you some pictures of that in a moment. One of the key areas in phase 2 is also to bring all of as many pre-K classrooms and bring them out of the transportable classrooms and bring them inside of the buildings. So we strategically used our Smart Bond aid to build classrooms at many sites, and this is one example of that. So our goal is to, at some point here very quickly, not have any pre-K classrooms and any transportables anywhere in the city. That's one of the aspirational goals that we have in this coming up. Next slide, please. And it kind of gives you an overview and some scenes inside the building. I mean, it's just absolutely spectacular what we've done. It's one of the, it's really it's become really a showcase for us. And our final story is the journey of School 16. So when I talked about school number 58 and the challenges of turning over 100-year-old building into and modernizing it, this building presented us, I believe, our greatest challenges. When we entered this facility, you couldn't get all the floors were leaning one way or the other. It was really a structural mess, for lack of a better way of saying it. And what Pepin and his team have done here is just, it's made several architectural magazines because of the way we've maintained the historical presence of the building in the community, but also added all types of assets inside the school. And you can see some pictures of before and after, and it's just stark in terms of what it looks like now. Next slide, please. Just absolutely incredible, the amount of work. And once again, and make all this happen. In a sense, we took the building down and put it back together, but maintaining the facade in the front of the building. That's pretty much what we have done. Next slide, please. Kelly, next slide, please.
School 54.
There we go.
School 54 is a unique opportunity for us. This is a school where we really wanted to change the dynamic of the campus. the school at its northern boundary has a street called Chase Street that basically had a limited number of houses there. And we had the opportunity to basically procure those homes, change the actual streetscape around or the street infrastructure around, and build out more green space. Pepin, if you can talk to how the state basically has a premium or has a really high regard or demand for us having more green space for the children to actually play and get exercise. And also it gives us an opportunity to have our bus loop in an enclosed area.
Sure, Commissioner. Many of our buildings lack adequate green space, and their sites are severely below SED standards in terms of acreage requirements for an urban campus. So we've had to apply for a variance for each of those sites as far as modernizing in an inadequate acreage for our students. So for 54, the state worked very closely with us, with the city, and in terms of providing an opportunity to acquire residential properties and developing those sites and bring pretty much the site closer to the SCD requirements in terms of size standards. So the commissioner's team and our team have been working very closely with our architects and New York State to install a parking lot, improve the circulation for transportation, increase bus safety, and we're in a process of abandoning Chase Street to pretty much optimize our surface areas.
Thank you. This is an example of really coordinating with the community, coordinating with the city of Rochester, architectural and engineering, the Rochester Fire Department, and the school district to look at opportunities to build these campuses out to make them more community-based and more of a respite or an area in which it's all about education, and it's more of a secured campus with a secured bus loop where the bus loop is right on the campus. Pepin, you want to go over the overview on the finances for phase 1 and phase 2?
Yes, sir. In phase 1, $325 million were authorized in terms of bonding capacity. We were able to leverage this amount with $16.3 million of Excel aid to reduce the local share for the district. There were no smart bond allocations at the time, so we maximized the state aid and minimized the local share as best as possible. There were some opportunities for energy rebates working with RG&E and NYSERDA. We were able to capture $462,000 of energy rebates towards the local share itself. At the completion of phase 1, the state pretty much granted the program $287 million. But the difference is not really a pure local share. It's a very complicated calculation, as you all know, working with the debt service, the folks on Wall Street, to make sure the impact on the school district on a yearly basis is as minimal as possible. For phase 2, the board, the joint board, the school district and the city were authorized to borrow $435 million. Obviously, with the statute, there's a requirement to seek additional sources of funds. Excel has been exhausted at that time, but we're able to work with the district to allocate 8.5 million of the $47 million that were allocated to the school district towards the modernization program. We're also able to recapture $128,000 in energy savings. Again, there were many efforts to minimize the local share and maximize the state share. Community school grants were applied for the Monroe project and for East High. About $1.8 million were donated towards the Phase 2B project at Monroe High School, and we're able to provide some shared spaces, community spaces at that building. And we're also able to improve the athletic surfaces, which I believe Commissioner Jones or Mike Schmidt or Helen will talk about. Again, we were able to turn a $435 million project into a $450 million project with the supplemental aid and grants we received from either the state or other sources. We've estimated the state aid to be about $401 million so far. The Board of Ed had authorized a local share limit of 17.8 million. We are below that right now, and we expect to stay below it. It's illegal to go above it. Obviously, there's always a challenge or a balance between budget, cost allowances, and the amount of work that's needed at any of those buildings. So we tried very hard to partner with the city and the school district to handle the most pressing items and the health and safety items first. And if there are any monies left over, we take care of the alternates or a wish list from the end users.
Thank you.
Okay, Kelly, next slide, please. So Phase 3, this is what you as a Board of Education authorized in December of 2018. Our last presentation was in November of 2018 at the Finance Committee. I'll just go back over briefly with it again, because there have been some slight modifications to the original proposal, but I'll explain where it fits in. These are the original schools, and none of these schools can come off our list without Board of Education approval. So if we wanted to adjust an actual building and no longer do modernization at one of these, we have to come back by resolution for the board to weigh in. So if you remember back to my presentation in October, there are many different points where boards of education have a requirement by resolution to make adjustments. So that would be possibly the next time you would see this. But right now, this is the program that's set before the legislature, and Norm will discuss that in a moment. But real briefly, really kind of high school focused at the top. We're going to complete projects at Monroe and East, the pool auditorium windows at Monroe, performing arts and athletic wing at East High School. And then Edison is a very large continued CTE upgrade. We've not specified the programs as of yet because we're going to be working with Dr. Morris, Dr. Black and their teams to make sure that what we invest in is going to be our long-term CTE focuses. So we'll have more updates as we get closer to the actual design of those projects. A complete reconstruction and renovation of the Douglas campus, as well as the Wilson Commencement campus. The Franklin campus is a brand new gymnasium, entrance point off of Hudson Avenue. Kind of where the bus loop off of Hudson Avenue will have an entrance from there as well. Because Franklin is an upper and lower school configuration, this will give the lower school, it's really completely separated from the upper school physically, and really no need to kind of cross over it, only in unusual circumstances. So we're excited about this work schedule to be there. We've got some money set aside to do some make-ready work at swing spaces. Once again, we're moving elementary and/or secondary students in and out of these swing spaces, so there is a need to do some real minor work. We don't like to spend a lot of money in swing spaces, but sometimes it just necessitates it in order to make it more comfortable for all the students. And then the next 4 projects are elementary or K-8 in nature, School 9, School 19, School 3, and School 29. They are also complete reconstruction of the schools. And obviously upgrades in all the mechanical systems in those particular buildings. Also, again, once very much worth investing in because they are not, facilities are not old by the age of a facility, but also with their connection to the city art centers. they're a facility that we want a long-term impact with. And then finally, some additional work at Flower City School 54. Pepin had just talked about the complete, taking out retiring up Chase Street and turning all that the back of that campus into into one contiguous space where students can move about freely and not have to worry about crossing streets and so forth. The street right now will be offline, but long term it's going to be it'll be completely gone. And then our Heritage Park, which we had talked about back in November, this is going to be a series of outdoor improvements, as well as a heritage trail and an outdoor classroom. And then certainly the district-wide technology is a big part of any of our programs. Next slide, please. All right. Alan, why if you can take us briefly through the schedule as it stands now.
You're muted, Alan.
We see here is a Gantt chart, which really sort of outlines where we expect to be in terms of starting as well as completion for phase 3. And right now we have the phase 3 legislation is in Albany, waiting for approval from both the Senate, the Assembly, and then finally the governor. So here what we expect to do is for Monroe, for example, which has been for the most part pushed out, Monroe, School 54 and School 22, which are continuations from phase 2. Monroe, we're looking to put in hopefully a pool, as well as doing some work on replacing the windows as an additional asbestos abatement in and around in the building itself. So if we are looking to get the approvals, some in July, and that really depend on, depending on us getting the go-ahead in this legislative session, which will end, well, the budget session ends in April, but the legislative session ends in June, but we're looking to have the approvals sometime in between now and then, basically between now and when the governor approves his budget. So we're looking to start the bidding in October, as well as in the construction would go until April of 2022. And then we'll go back again in July in the summer of 2023 for the phase abatement, which we're looking to be complete in the second quarter or so of 2024 and on down the line. What we do, and even when each phase, say phase 3, we have phases A, B, and C, and you can see here in terms of where we expect to start, as well as complete in those various phases. So we're looking at Monroe, 54, 22, Marshall, and Franklin, and then also School 29 in the first phase, the 3A projects to start. Basically, we would start the work in earnest in July of this year, in terms of both the planning, the approvals, and then the construction.
And one thing you'll definitely notice here is that on the second column, the use of swing space. If you recall back to our previous phases, the buildings that we've utilized for swing space has changed along the line. So our calendar here could be adjusted if some swing space becomes available, or if some comes offline. It obviously alters our ability to complete things on time and on budget. So we are very disciplined in regards to holding on to those spaces until we're finished with the modernization program. You also will notice that we're really trying to do much of these without moving our kids to complete these construction projects. So we're very excited. We believe it's a reasonable construction timeline that we can meet, and it really all is right now contingent upon legislative decisions that are ahead of us. Kelly, next slide, please. So as we kind of close this, I'm going to have Norm kind of walk you through what we believe are our next steps and strategies to work with our legislative delegation as we approach hopefully a passing of the bill and a June signature by the governor later this spring.
I'm muted, of course. Third time's a charm. I've been in contact with our local delegation. I did a brief presentation with them. Talked with the leader of the delegation, Harry Bronson. He's all in. We submitted to him a similar presentation highlighting some of our achievements and the direction we want to go into. Let's really get behind this as a community, because at the end of the day, when we do the ribbon cuttings, the smiles that you'll see and the families that have changed and the children that want to walk to school or go to this community school changes the community. The BOP program is something that I'm so pleased with, that it provides individuals. We have had over 86 different companies come in to take part of the BOP program, the Business Opportunity Program. Of those 86, 20 have worked on some of these projects with the School Modernization Program. 10 have worked with programs with me at the City of Rochester. This is another means or mechanism for individuals who have been locked out or not have the opportunity to participate in these types of public works projects that will give them those opportunities. Right now, what we're trying to do at the City of Rochester is use the BOP program or programs similar to BOP as a means of meeting the goals and needs of the apprenticeship programs. So we're right now petitioning the state to have that approved. So there's so many positive things that are going on with this modernization program. But the other thing is that if you looked at some of the dates of the schools that they're actually working on, some of these schools went back to 1910. And I recall, my history in the city schools, and I went to school number 9. And the school number 9 I went to was built in 1848. And so the new school number 9 was where I had my first city job on Clinton Avenue. And now that's in need of some rehab and some tender loving care. So we have this amazing opportunity to really change the landscape of our educational system and make it comparable or better than any facilities or any campuses in this entire area. Edison Tech, for some reason we decided to build on places that had some other issues. Edison Tech's football field needs a major overhaul. The campus is probably one of the most spectacular campuses in the area, and the actual curriculum has the opportunity to provide so much more for our children. You have a recording studio there at that campus, thanks to this modernization program. The sky's the limit. The opportunities are numerous. And if we can really get our local delegation on board and supporting this, we can do some amazing things with this Phase 3 legislation. So basically, we really need everyone to come together and say, this is something that we want to do for our children for this district.
All right, Kelly, that concludes our prepared remarks and our presentation. So really ready to take.
Thank you.
Oh, am I muted?
Thank you, Mike.
You're very welcome.
No, thank you for that presentation. I think to Norm's comments really summarize the benefits of the FMP project, but more personally, we want to thank you, Norm, Pepin, Alan, and Mike for all the work that you've done. I know you don't do this for the accolades or the thanks, but we do appreciate the good work that you're doing. You're doing this above and beyond your normal jobs, and we appreciate that. And the board would also appreciate it if you would share our thanks to everybody who we can identify who is doing the hard work, people that work with you all and people who are executing these very important contracts. Essentially, the board and the community is thankful that you've made our buildings places where students want to be. You've made our buildings places where our staff have the tools that they need to educate our children. And finally, and as Norm, as you pointed out, with the BOT program and other initiatives, just the jobs itself, you've given the community and small businesses what they need, which is opportunity. And that is an asset. That is the opportunity to gather and generate wealth and share wealth is something that is in short supply. And FMP gives that opportunity to our community and our people. So we really do appreciate that. But I'm sure there might be some questions. So let me switch over to my participant screen. Give me a second. I'm on my phone. I'm still in my car. Okay, let's see. Anybody have any questions or comments? I'm looking on my screen. I don't see any.
I can let you know who's in the queue. It's
Oh, I do see it. I do see it. I got it. I see Willa, then Beatrice, Ricardo, and Bill. I got it. Go ahead, Willa.
Thanks. Thank you for the presentation, all. Two questions. One of the things that State keeps track of is, of course, the age of our buildings and the average age. And the examples you've given are buildings that, I don't know, 100 years old. Does the state still use the same date, the original construction date when it calculates our average building age, or have they reassigned it the age that it completed the FMP project? I know it's kind of a funny technical thing, but if all we are if what we're doing is renovating old buildings, the average age of our schools remains close to 100 years old, right? Unless somebody alters the calculation.
Yep, and you work very closely with the state of New York on all these different projects. Can you take that question?
Sure. The state has a very old formula for any school districts in New York State. And we've been trying very hard to get them to change that formula. But for some reasons, they're not ready to do that yet. So what they do, they would not allow us to build new, if you remember in phase one, because they felt that you would have to reduce footprint tremendously before they allow you to do any new project. So we had to work with what we had. School 16 was one of those buildings that were closed, I believe. And the community did not like the fact that their building was shut down. And I believe with a lot of community participation, we had to make School 16 a project. And that's why Mike said it was a structural nightmare to bring that building back to life, and we did. So what they do, every 5 years, there is a cost allowance that's assigned for a particular project based on needs and based on enrollment and based on programs. For Rochester, it was not really to our advantage to pretty much band-aid some of our life safety and emergency items. We worked with Mike Schmidt, the joint board, and we lobbied the state as far as doing another bill to allow us to do a double allowance, double maximum cost allowance. Instead of a 5-year reset, we asked them to give us enough dollars to do as many projects as we could in a particular building. And we told them we wouldn't touch that building again for 10 years. So it's a real challenge. And until the state really changes their aid formula, we're stuck with what we have.
I think that one part of the building, the age of the building doesn't change. They monitor that, but they do document all the different upgrades. So it's still
Right.
a beautiful old building that we've invested a lot in.
Got it. I have another question. I can either go to the bottom of the stack or ask it now. It's up to
Why don't we just go ahead and keep on going down the list, and then we'll get back to you, okay, Willa?
Yep.
Commissioner LeBron?
Yeah, I have two questions.
Commissioner LeBron?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, we can.
I had to write them down because I didn't want to forget them. So one thing that you mentioned was that you met with Harry Bronson and some of the state legislation. And I'm just wondering if there's a holdup there, what that holdup is, and if there's anything that we as commissioners can do to also assist in advocating so that we can move forward with the projects for our schools. So I'll ask that one and wait for an answer.
Okay, Commissioner LeBron, am I muted?
No,
No, he can hear you.
We've really worked on nurturing some positive relationships with the new local delegation. I'm in communication right now with Jeremy Cooney from the Senate. He's sponsoring the bill from the Senate standpoint. This is the first time this bill is going to be sponsored by a Democrat in the Senate. And I have a letter right here that's going to him tomorrow because they're putting it into the budget for it's SB 176. We're scheduling a meeting with all the local DELs from the state and the assembly, and they're all on the same page. And we need to keep it that way because I think it's just so important right now. We have momentum. We've had some hiccups the last two times around, but now it's so important. We can't allow this to lapse because there's so many positive things that's happening. So we do have everybody on board, but it wouldn't harm us one bit if we send letters to all of the local DELs and saying how important this is, how important it is to change the basic landscape there. I look at the, when I go to the schools, and I love being in the schools because I'm inspired by the young folks and their innocence and the excitement of having grown-ups come to the school and care about them. And when I go for the open houses and the ribbon cuttings, it's just amazing just to see how important it is to them. I was at school, they call it number 22, but to me it's number 6. That's where and I was there. That was one of the last ribbon cuttings we had. We had the ribbon cutting for the yard. Remember, I'd seen you and Commissioner Malloy there, but I was there with the family. The church from First Genesis was there. They're playing music. The principal was out front dancing. All the local DELs were there, and it was just something just to be part of. And those are the type of things that these things, this program brings, and it really creates a community. To answer your question, a short answer to your question, yes, I think they're all on board, but we would love your participation and your help. A letter of support would be great. Sorry for being long-winded.
Thank you. I think my other question was related to, I'm going to pull it back up. I wrote it down. I didn't want to forget it, Nora. So in this final phase that we're doing, as I'm learning more about play and playability and landscaping and play for kids, is there, I guess, are the designs final, but if they're final, is play, landscape, and accessibility kind of incorporated into this phase 3?
Absolutely. And Mike can talk to you about what we did, how we transplanted some play apparatus from a school that's not going to be a school anymore. And we're repurposing it because it's in really good shape. And this has, it meets all the needs for, I think, special needs.
Yes, it does.
So want to talk about that?
Two parts of that, Commissioner. First, I had outlined the strategy, so to speak, in phase 3. None of those designs, the actual designs themselves, have started yet. So we're really kind of a blank slate in terms of how we approach that. But access, whether it's in a play area or throughout the building, first of all, it's required by law. But whenever we touch a building, you have to upgrade all those areas to make sure they meet the latest ADA requirements. And as Ron said, we talked at length about number 25 school in the past. We moved that playground and we're reutilizing it again. So we're also maximizing our resources because that was one that was specifically purchased for students with disabilities in mind. So that's definitely a priority for us.
And a prime example, if you want to see that in terms of what we've done and can be done, is look at schools 54, schools 16, and school 50.
15. What about 15?
And 15.
Yeah, Florida goes to school 15. And I was at the ribbon cutting for 16 and 15 for both. So there was some amazing like artwork, but I do want to, I guess when we get to that time, so one, I want to just say that I will absolutely write a letter, but I think it should come from the entire board. That way you're delivering one letter with the entire board supporting that we continue with the phases and that we get secure the funding. So, you know, I don't know how the rest of the board feels. I'm just making that recommendation, but I'd be more than willing to write a letter. If everyone doesn't agree, I'm fine with that too. But two, as we move into, after the approval, into the development, I know for myself, I want to make sure that the parents from those schools are present and giving input. And so more to come. You guys will hear more from me. I'm going to zip it up. Thank you.
Well, I just want to, we were remiss. We didn't do something today when we started off our presentation. Superintendent Leslie appointed a new person to our board, and that's Melanie Martinez Davis. And we had a intro meeting earlier this week, and what she did, she just came up with a fantastic idea, and it just hits exactly what you said, Beatrice. She said, why don't we have students involved in some of the planning, what's going on here? And we're starting to incorporate that right now. So we're doing, a lot of this phase 3 focuses is on the senior high schools. So we're going to look at bringing in some 6th, 7th, 8th graders into the planning process, because they're going to be the ones who are going to be basically reaping the rewards and the benefits of what we're going to be doing in these schools. So, you know, we've got a lot of energy and just a diversity of ideas, and no idea is a bad idea. So along those lines, Melody has already, started, approaching that and pushing that forward. So I just want to introduce Melody. You guys already know her, but she's also on the board, and she's going to make sure that we stay focused and look at the community and look at the students and making sure their interests are being addressed as we build out these better buildings for them.
Well, thank you for uplifting that. Kudos to you, Melody. Absolutely have kids involved. I'm working on the Grand Avenue Park and all of the neighborhood associations over there, but we're going to have kids too helping design that. So I love the opportunity that kids will have an input from the very implementation of design and see it come to fruition. So thank you all for that.
Well, Beatrice, as I wear my other hat, let me know if you have any issues with the Grand Avenue Park. So I wear a couple hats here.
I know. We'll pass over, Nor.
Okay.
Commissioner Adams?
Yeah, 2 quick, easy to answer questions. I'm wondering, I've seen Marshall on the list. Whatever work you're doing in Marshall, will it be done by September? That's one. The second question is exactly what is being done at 29. Is that a phase 3 or we get or phase continuation? Those are my 2 questions.
Yeah, excellent. So the work at Marshall will be done. I would say if we move a school into swing space for September of 21, then the work will be done by September of 21. If it's going to be September of 22, then we would do the work the following summer. depending on what school will be going in there. More than likely, it'll be either Douglas or Wilson commencement, because high schools fit into high schools, right? So that's a very logical place for us to start. But we haven't quite determined the whole program. But that work is done summer prior to somebody going into it, and the same will be true for Jefferson as well. On the second part, the 29 school, we've kind of once again it'll be a mechanical system, asbestos abatement, upgrade, and then also a modernization of the classrooms. We've left that one, it's right now it's an elementary based program, and it has a student with disability population there. So that would be at this point the focus of it. But like everything else on the board, what we really try to do is not prejudge anything, because as we all know, things in our district can change, and buildings could be utilized for a different priority. So whether it's 29 or any one of the buildings, that we have an open mind to it right now. The ballpark price on it is, or estimated price, I should say, excuse my language, would be more based upon what we think it's going to take to really upgrade all the mechanical systems and just do a classroom refresh for every room based upon the square footage. So that's where that number kind of comes from, and then we can fine tune that when we know the final decision on what that building is going to entail long term.
Can I add something, Commissioner, or Mike?
Sure.
Sure. Okay. Again, it's all predicated on when the bill is passed and signed by the governor. Mike mentioned earlier that we're starting with a blank slate. For each phase after passage of the legislation, we still have to do a project selection with the board, although you approve the list, but we still have to obtain approval of the board chair and the school superintendent on a phase 3 master plan. Right. Then have a meeting with SED, talk about the financial plan, have the New York State Controller approve that master plan. So once that's done, we need to update the municipal agreements with City Council and the Board of Ed. So there are a few items that need to happen first before we're able to put pencil to paper. So yes, Mike is right. It's all predicated on when the bill is passed and signed by Governor Cuomo. That's when we'll know how to finalize the schedule.
Thank you, Pepin.
Mm-hmm.
Thank
Commissioner
you.
Clark.
Yes, thank you. I also want to thank you for the outstanding presentation tonight. It was very eye-opening for me. And I have a relatively quick question. As a new board member, you may have already discussed this in the past, but I was very pleased to hear Mr. Williams talk about the $250,000 revolving loan fund to get minority and women enterprises in there to participate in the construction. But my question is, I know a lot of the smaller minority women-owned enterprises also have a problem with bonding, and also have a problem with bulk purchases, because if they're not purchasing in bulk, they can't get the discounts that the larger construction companies get, and their bids are not as competitive. So are there any mechanisms in place as it relates to bonding, blanket purchases, to make these businesses more competitive? And then my last question is, you talked about the BOP program. I don't know what that is, and if I can get a brief understanding.
Commissioner Clark, we're going to get you an update, a nice little brochure pamphlet on BOP, some of our success stories. And what you spoke about is something that I think is one of the next phases of BOP. BOP was something that came out of Savin engineers. They put it out there. They said, guess what? We're not getting the participation that we thought we should get, and this is a way in which we can break down some of the barriers. So bonding is an issue. Apprenticeships, there are issues. Cash flow are issues. Being in facilities for so many years, I watch companies go under because of them not getting their payments on time. I watched companies go under because they've exhausted their lines of credit. And then once they receive their payments as a sub, basically it was a wash and there's no profit. So as we look at bonding, and especially internally, we've been trying to do different ways of bonding and putting together surety for different individual businesses and companies. That's something I'm sure that we'll be able to talk about and talk to our to the council, legal counsel on, and see if there's a way in which BOP or the actual revolving loan fund can provide some assistance to some of these worthy businesses that are out there. Because all you need is just one opportunity, one chance to make it happen. And there's so many people that are out there that give up their Wednesday nights and they come in there and they sit down there for 3 hours I said Wednesday and two nights out of the week. They're there and they're committed to the process. And there's actually some that I'm looking at hiring right now for the city. Excuse me.
Commissioner Powell.
Thank you. That's a perfect setup for my next question. It was about the BOT program. And I think the best person to answer it might be Mr. Williams. You'll recall, Mr. Williams, that when you were on the board of Ed with us, that there were a lot of conversations about the percentages of set aside for minority and women-owned businesses, and that based on a policy that is identical between the city's policy book manual and our own, going back to I think it dates back to the late 80s. I might be wrong about the date, but it hasn't been updated since. And part of the reason it wasn't updated is during the Pataki years, we actually lost minority-owned businesses in our area, and it would have been devastating to change the set-asides under those conditions. So the question is, have we bounced back and perhaps even gained minority and women-owned businesses to the extent where now would be a good time to do a new survey of construction companies and update both the city and the school district's policy?
Yeah, the short answer is yes, and it should. Both the city and the city school district should probably take a look at what the state is doing, because what we've done is we have a 33% goal overall between minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, and then we have the DBE and SBE. And that's on the business side. And we also have goals for the workforce.
Mr. Williams, can I ask for clarification before you go on? When you say 33% set, you mean of the joint constructions work specifically?
Yes, for all, yes.
Okay, understood. Yes. Because I believe the set-asides in our normal, run-of-the-mill construction is, I don't think that that's the percentage, but that the set-asides are woefully out of date for that.
Okay, and the other sort of point of distinction too, they aren't set-asides but goals, and in each and every case we have been able to meet that with the help of both the board, and we monitor it also through a independent compliance officer. So each and every contract that we let, before we sign it, the prime has to basically identify who they will be using as their M, their W, as well as their D and SBE components. And then throughout the course of the construction, we monitor that on a monthly basis to see where they are.
And Mike and we do site visits.
Right.
Speaking of site visits,
Eyeball test.
did you have a chance to look at the southeast corner of the soccer field at School 15. There's an old backstop just inside the wood line. I think I emailed you about it. Have you had a chance to look at that and see whether that's on city property or on the school district's property?
Definitely on city property. There's no doubt about that.
Because it's in the woods.
How did I know that you were going to say it was city property?
I've investigated myself. I actually pasted it out.
And I say all these great things about you.
Well, I discovered that there's a trail through Washington Grove that
All right, I'm looking through my,
comes out of the woods right there. And you wouldn't know there was a backstop there because the woods have swallowed it up. But I'm thinking, well, why isn't that soccer field a dual purpose, both soccer field and baseball diamond?
We'll take a look at it.
We'll take a look at that.
And if it's ours, of course, we'll take care of it.
And if it happens to be ours, then we will take care of it.
But if you want to take a look at, in terms of the M and EBE goals, we'd certainly love to sit down to talk with whoever is in charge of doing that for the district to show you where we are and what we've been doing. Without a doubt.
All right.
Thank you.
all right, I am looking at our list and I don't see any further questions or comments. Am I right, Madam Clerk? I want to make sure my cell phone is right. I don't see any.
You are correct.
All right. So again, on behalf of the board, I think a number of board members have expressed their appreciation for the work and the presentation today, but Norm, Mike, Pepin, Alan, Melody, thank you for the presentation, but more importantly, on behalf of the board, thank you for all the good work. You really made our schools places for students to have academic opportunities. And as we've indicated, as a number of you have said tonight, ancillary benefit to this initiative, the facilities modernization, is the opportunities that it creates for our entire community. So thank you very much. Thank you for the presentation. And we're looking forward to getting an update when FMP3 is finally approved. With that, I just need a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
I think I heard Commissioner Adams. Or a second?
Okay.
Seconded.
I heard a couple people. Commissioner Malloy, all those in favor of adjourning, indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Good night, everybody. Thanks again, FMP board.
Night.
Appreciate you.
Much.